It is officially episode, I believe. Let's pull it up so I don't botch this. But I think it's 35. Is it 35, 34, 36? Me and the old man have been up to no good. We are officially at episode 35 of Short-Term High Volatility Investments, the podcast edition brought to you by 1:37 p.m. I am not joined by my beautiful, wonderful, amazing co-host that I normally am, the hype man, Jeff Sheesby, the old man who bets, taking a week off, enjoying the holidays. But I do have another G at Guns Picks on Twitter. Like he said before, you can find him on the Dad Bods. You can find him in GPO Lock. I have the pleasure of doing podcasts with him on a regular basis. So this is easy. This is seamless. I went from one G to another G, Guns Picks from Jeff. Guns, we're here again. Thank you for joining. And let's roll right into it. You mentioned the bowl games. Ton of sport happening right now across NBA, NFL, maybe the NHL if it ever comes back. We'll have to get Punisher picks in here for that. But let's roll with an early college football pick for today, December 29th. If you're listening to the podcast now, it's outdated. So hopefully you listen to the live performance on YouTube and Twitter. Let's roll with the pick, the analysis. What are you cooking up for this early Thursday bowl, Wednesday bowl game?
Yeah, with the bowl games, it's pretty wild because basically what you have to do is you got to continually track to see who's going to be playing in these games. I mean, for example, you took Mississippi State yesterday. If anyone took them, you didn't know that they were going to have 6 starters opt out right before kickoff, unless you were just paid attention to Mississippi State beat reporters all the way through.
I can't believe there's not like a better time limit on things.
They should put a deadline on this stuff, and maybe that's something that they'll look at the end of the season. I mean, I would, because this is frustrating for bettors and just frustrating.
You had that one, and then you had, how many hours before the UCLA game? Was it 6-7 hours? It was still day of game when that thing got canceled, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, then you got the COVID issues on top of it. And I mean, we're going to be talking a lot about COVID when we get into the NFL stuff, but I'm looking at Maryland on this one, -4 as the play here. Listen, Maryland lost 6 of their last 8 games, but they've won the net yards battle because they can run the ball. They have an electric offense with Tua's brother in there, 444 yards per game of total offense. And they have a plus 24 net yard average for the season. And then you got to look basically at the Virginia Tech side. Now they've lost 7 starters that have just completely opted out for the NFL, including their top 2 receivers. Their starting quarterback, Bromeister, he's out. So they're bringing in this Connor Blumrick, who basically all I could find out on him is he's a mobile quarterback. So there may be more of a one-dimensional style, load the box on the Maryland side and just stop the run. But they do have Blackshear that's going to be running there. So there may be a back and forth on the run game too. So when I see 2 teams that can run the ball a lot, I kind of lean towards the under as well. So the under 55 could probably be a play as well. Now you have a good passing team with Tua's brother, I can't Tyaloga, 65.
I know, right? I just call him Little Tua.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and then they just played a tougher schedule too, playing in the Big Ten, and they had to play a lot of like heavy run teams, so they know how to handle the run. So I'm looking at this from one side to the other, and plus they lost. Virginia Tech lost 4 out of their top 10 tacklers as well. So that is kind of where I'm sitting at this spot. I want to be the contrarian on this one and take Virginia Tech, and that's kind of usually how I go with these bowls. But also ACC dogs are always a fade. I think they're hitting at 30% from my tracking on the closing line, probably since 2014, I believe. So with all that being said, I can't take the dog for ACC. I'm going to roll with the Big Ten favorite. Maryland -4 is the play.
There you go. Starting out strong, which you love to see. That game starts, I think, officially at 2:30, right? So you guys got about an hour.
2:30.
Yeah, so this will be floating around. We'll tag the college football pick, but hopefully you're listening live and you can go get it and maybe dabble on the pick there with Maryland or even the under. Good little split too to hedge yourself. Yeah, man. Well, let's roll into a little NFL talk. We wanted to do the quick hitters are going to be week 16 kind of, coming out of it, what happened, looking at the playoff picture a little bit. We're going to give you guys a ton of week 17 picks and previews. The weeks keep throwing me off because we got 18 weeks now. So there's actually 2 games left, 2 full weeks of NFL action. But where I actually want to start with the NFL before we get into those 2 quick topics and finish with all those picks is John Madden, man. Kind of sudden, kind of not, right? I knew he was in rough shape. He was 85 years old.
Right.
They just released that documentary. So I feel like the hot topic around Madden was going this entire holiday season. Did you catch the doc?
I caught parts of the doc. I
Yeah.
think they played it like was
Again
it like
last night, I
Christmas
think.
Eve or something like that.
Yeah.
And I think I saw. I'm actually recording it. I think they
That's what I
played
did.
tonight on FS1, so I could watch the whole thing. But it's weird because if from a generational standpoint, from my end of it, I remember Madden calling games. That's kind of my
100%.
childhood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, he stopped playing calling games in 2008, I believe.
Yeah.
And
He started in 1979. So it was 79 and 2008 was that run.
just think about that. You have a whole generation of young guys, 20 somethings, that only know Madden from a video game, and they don't know him as a coach, as an announcer. I mean, there's not he changed the game as far as analysts are concerned, and it kind of transcended into all the sports, in my opinion. I mean, he made the game fun. If you were just a regular watcher of football, like, it was fun to watch him like call the games, because he would not only just like break down a play, he would also like circle Nate Newton's head with the steam coming out of it, and like just kind of making crack jokes, and just you just could tell that he was just having the time of his life, and you kind of like gravitated towards that when you were watching the games. I mean him calling games is, I miss it a lot, and I know he's always been one of those guys that I'm like, oh wow, Madden's still alive. I can't believe he's still alive. And now
Because he
I can't say
disappeared
that
and you
anymore.
didn't hear anything from him for so
Right.
long. Like, he left in 2008 and that was it. Like, at that point,
Yeah,
he was
he was
already
on.
inducted into the
They
Hall
had
of
him on
Fame.
Sirius NFL for a while. I remember that in like 2014. They
Yeah.
put him in there for like 20, 30 minutes
He
to
did a
talk
couple
football.
games. Yeah. Or
But
just even.
I mean, he wasn't as like, he was
Yeah.
just an older guy. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just kind of cool to hear Madden's voice on the radio. But
Yeah. And I mean, I'm in your age range. So I remember, him calling games. Now that younger crew is just like, either the highlights or the kind of the video game, which is crazy. But I was actually digging in, and I know they're going to cover a lot of this in the doc too. But I didn't realize I think how good his coaching was. I obviously knew he won a Super
yeah,
Bowl. I knew he was successful with the Raiders. I knew he finally got into the Hall of Fame in 2006. But when you look at some of these stats, he became a head coach at 32. Right, promoted from linebackers coach with the Raiders, and for a long time, I think probably until McVay, that was the youngest, maybe a couple others before that, but youngest coach to ever be hired in professional football. He went 103, 32, and 7. He was the youngest coach to get to 100 wins. He owns that 750 winning percentage.
wow.
His team with the Raiders, they won Super Bowl 11, but they lost a ton of AFC championship games. I mean, they were in it for that 10 or 11 year stretch almost every single year, getting to the AFC championship game or the Super Bowl and coming up short a lot. So, he retired quickly. It was a short-lived career, but that kind of spurred the broadcasting and what a run it was, right?
I mean, I couldn't believe. Oh yeah, when you sent me those stats on him, I was like, I didn't think he had that great of a record. I mean, I remember him from the Super Bowl. I mean, he was there at peak Raider time,
right?
Like, so, but there was a lot of coaches in that kind of that window for the Raiders with the Al Davis days where they were just winning game after game, getting the AFC Championship, getting to the Super Bowl. But yeah, I mean, his coaching career. To me, I only knew him from the highlights from that one Super Bowl,
right?
Seeing him
getting carried off, right? That iconic image.
And then he pretty much went from there right into broadcasting. I didn't realize he's been there since like 1979. I watched in the documentary, which was kind of interesting. Fox just paid him a stupid amount of money during that time to get him to do the game.
At some point, it became like a bidding war whenever the rights were up, or whoever was kind of
with
trying
CBS
to get
or something like
NFL.
that. Yeah.
It was like CBS, NBC, Fox. I think he worked for all of them. He was one of the few that's kind of really bounced around to almost every major network out of the 4.
Yeah. And then once he went, Pat Summerall went, and then like all the producers went with him. So it was kind of like this, everybody just kind of shifted towards where Madden's going, because they knew
it was like the stamp of approval, right?
I mean, yeah, that's a cash cow. I think everybody just loved that guy to death. And like, that's the only guy that they wanted to work for,
What a legend. Well, I'm happy to talk football like I know he was. So let's roll into the playoff scenarios and the playoff pictures. Like we said, there's 2 weeks left here, so it is getting a little interesting. Just running through the playoff picture in the NFC and the AFC. If it ended today, which it will not, there's still 2 games left, 2 weeks. We have Green Bay with the bye in the NFC, Dallas versus Philadelphia 2-7, Rams versus San Francisco 3-6, Tampa Bay versus Arizona 4-5. So let's start in the NFC, right? Interesting because 2 of those matchups, 2-7 Dallas Philly and 3-6 Rams San Francisco are division rematches, right? If the
Mm-hmm.
playoffs ended today. But where do you think this thing shakes out? I mean, the three teams still in the hunt are Minnesota, Atlanta, New Orleans. Do you think anything in the NFC changes, or you think these 7 teams make it and it's just kind of seeding?
I mean, I think, those tail end spots, like, Philly's going to be playing for their playoff lives in the next
Correct.
couple games. I think they're playing, in conference. I wonder about the one that I wonder is Green Bay going to be the team that's going to get the bye.
I know.
And where's their motivation?
They could
Yeah.
slip up.
Where's their motivation in the last couple weeks? I mean, they've played just kind of like to the level of their competition for the past 4 weeks. They're banged up. Aaron Rodgers got a bad toe and he's playing like hurt. Their secondary looks like less and less as strong as they've been in the beginning of the season. And then they got to go play Minnesota this week. And Minnesota has beaten them. They beat them at home. And then they have Detroit after that. So their motivation is probably just going to be, I'm going to just get enough to get the victory. They may lose to Minnesota. I don't know, but I don't see them losing to Detroit if they lose if they lose to Minnesota. So that's kind of like where I'm seeing Dallas is probably kind of hungry. Dallas is playing like real good football right now. And
they're peaking at a good time.
And I think it's because they have a lot of the wide receiver core. They were piecemealing that together, and now they're getting a little bit stronger, which is scary for a lot of teams because their offense. I mean, granted it was against the Washington football team that looks absolutely awful right now. But they're kind of peaking right now. I don't know if they're just going to put the foot on the accelerator and try to get that buy spot, or if they're going to kind of like, maybe cool their jets, go into cruise control for the remainder of the season. I honestly, I think it's the latter. I mean, I think they really do speed up and want to get into that resting spot where Green Bay is seeing the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, if they sweep and Green Bay slips up, right? They're a game back right now, but they're kind of keeping pace, which is great. They hold tiebreakers almost somehow. I don't really know how. I should have read into the tiebreakers more, but they do hold tiebreakers over the Rams, the Bucks, and some of those other teams. So if they take care of business against the Cardinals, there's a shot. If they lose against the Cardinals and Green Bay wins, I know we'll touch on the Green Bay Minnesota game later. I think you could see a scenario where Dallas starts trying to avoid Philly in the playoffs because they play each other week 18. And maybe they do rest their starters, try and give up the L there, and that gets them out of that weird, third time playing a division team, which nobody likes to do, right? I've seen that scenario play out for years for the Cowboys. That I think one of the Giants' Super Bowl runs in 2007, we were the 1 seed. Of course, got the Giants, red hot, and they roll through you. So, and that was, we had beaten them twice that year in that playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
Giants and Eli Magic prevails. So I do think the NFC picture is a little weird. New Orleans probably played themselves out of it in that game against Monday. So I think you're probably talking about a lot of seeding.
I think COVID took them out of the playoff picture.
Ian
for
Book
sure.
did, Guns. Any comments on Ian Book, Notre Dame quarterback?
Listen, I'm never high. I'm high on Notre Dame college quarterbacks. I'm
what
not
about
high
that
on pros.
0-24 straight start?
Yeah,
like that.
Ian Book looked. Yeah, 0-24 straight up. And that I was trying to tell my dad, I was like, when was the last time they won? Was it like Brady Quinn or was it Rick Meyer? I mean,
I think it was Brady, right? Exactly.
Do we have to go that far back?
Do we skip a generation?
Yeah, it's so interesting because they had like Deshaun Kaiser, they had Ian Book. I'm never high on them being professional quarterbacks. Ian Book would always try to run if he didn't have that first look. And he basically looked like that, but you're going against professional linebackers with a lot of speed, and you're not going to get those yards that easily. And I think that, I don't think the receiver of the team is really backing him at all. I mean, he had a few throws that, hit the guys on the chest. They were dropping passes, even though they were short, but it was
still down their number one receiver. That team definitely has been ravaged. But let's switch gears to the AFC. I think this race to me is a lot more interesting.
Yeah.
If it ended again today, you have Kansas City with the bye, which I think a lot of people, kick dirt on their grave, right, early in the year. Tennessee 2 versus 7 Miami. You have that matchup this week, interestingly enough. So that will obviously shake up. Cincinnati 3 versus 6 New England, and Buffalo 4 versus Indy 5. Now, in the hunt here, you really have 6 teams that are still in the mix. 3 of them are for one division because I think that AFC North is still pure chaos. So Baltimore, the Chargers, Las Vegas, the Steelers, the Browns, and the Broncos still all technically, mathematically
alive. Any division here you want to start with?
I'm the East is kind of interesting to me.
Yeah.
In
The
a
East
lot of
is
ways.
all intensive purposes wrapped up, right? Buffalo controls their own destiny.
Correct. Yeah. And I don't think they really have that strong of a competition. They got to
They
play
go
Atlanta this week.
Falcons and Texans. I put it in here in my notes. Jets, Falcons, Jets back to back.
Yeah, so they basically, I think they're just going to go on cruise control. Atlanta's a bad team, even though they have 7 wins. I don't know how they have 7 wins, but they do. And you have, yeah, it's crazy. But I see this kind of like shuffling around. I think Miami's kind of in one of those danger spots, in my opinion. I know they're on like a 7 or 8 game win streak, but if you see the teams that they basically beat the bottom feeders of the NFL. The only good win that they had was against Baltimore, and they're going to have to go and play Tennessee this week. I think they're in trouble big time there because they've just played lackluster teams in the past like 8 weeks. So that and with Miami, I feel like we're always talking about them in the playoff picture, and they're just so close yet so far away. They'll have that bad loss, and it's kind of like those last 2 games of the season, they just kind of falter. But I think the Patriots are 2 losses back to back. Good teams. They got to play the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think they stomp a mud hole into them this week.
It's a huge line right now. I think it's above 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, and I think they kind of finished the season off strong.
They finished against Miami.
Against Miami, which that's a revenge spot for them too from week 1, I believe, where they lost. So that's a good spot for them.
Well, here's an interesting scenario that could play out. I think unlikely, but could happen. And I read this on the Ringer yesterday today. So if the Raiders win out, the Raiders have the Colts and Chargers. I don't know home or away, but they have Colts and Chargers. Winnable games, tough games, right? Either way. But if the Raiders win out, they hold the tiebreakers over everyone else, so they sneak in, which essentially means that if Miami does in fact beat Tennessee, again, tough, right? So you have a lot of things happening here. I'm giving you a ridiculous scenario, but Raiders win out. They beat the Colts and the Chargers. The Dolphins beat the Titans. Regardless of what New England does this week, that sets up a loser leaves town match in week 18. Winner goes to the playoff. It's a play-in for Dolphins and Pats, which I'd love to see for pure chaos purposes.
Yeah, that'll be one of the premier matchups. I wonder if they'd move that to like a late game or something like that, or maybe a 425 or something. That'd be kind of interesting. But it's kind of amazing because there's like still 6 teams that are in contention to make the playoffs. And I mean, you have Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Denver. And I mean, most of these are AFC North teams.
Correct. Well, 3 of them in that division still up for grabs. I mean, so right now, since he's in the driver's seat, 538 puts them at a 72% chance to win the North and make the playoffs. I don't think one of these teams get into the wild card because they play each other and beat the shit out of each other over these last 2 games. It's like a round robin of who's who. But do you think Cincinnati gets it done, or do you think any of those other 3 teams can jump them? So you can lay out the scenarios, but I don't know if there's one that leans out to you.
I kind of see like Cleveland kind of skidding downwards.
Skidding out. Yeah.
2 brutal losses on the past couple of weeks. Especially against Green Bay. Now they're going to go on the road to go play Pittsburgh, a team that they lost to 15-10. And I think they could be in trouble in that game too, playing on the road. Baltimore is a little bit interesting. It looks like they're going to get Lamar Jackson back, so that's going to help the team a little bit more. That's a huge boost. They've missed him for the past 2 games. So, Baltimore can make a run there. I kind of like, I never know with Cincy. They're kind of off and on. I think their offense is really clicking right now with Higgins and Joe Burrow and just the whole crew, Jamar Chase. So, they could really, solidify themselves this week and then, hit the cruise control button. I don't know how far back, how big of a lead they have in the division and who they play in week 18. That'd be kind of interesting to see if especially if like Pittsburgh pulls it out. I know they're 2-2 in the division that Pittsburgh is, but
it's pretty. I mean, they do control their own destiny, and I think that's why the percentage is so high. They have to win one of their last 2. In terms of Cincinnati, but those final 2 games, I believe one of them is in the division. I lost it here. Let me check. Bengals.
I mean, if we were looking, say Cincinnati wins this one, I think the team that could really make a decent push for that last spot, and I don't think it's going to be Miami. I think it's probably going to be, Man, I'd like to really see Pittsburgh make that spot.
Yeah,
I
which
think
they could. So the
Yeah.
scenario for Pittsburgh is Cincinnati plays Kansas City and then a division game against the Browns, which is, again, why I said these teams are going to beat the crap out of each other, because obviously this week, the Steelers and the Browns play each other. So if this week, Steelers-Browns is essentially a loser leaves town. Whoever loses is eliminated from that division
Right.
race in week 17. So let's say the Steelers win, right? So the Steelers move on. What that means is they need help. They need the Bengals to lose too. But the Steelers, if they beat the Browns and the Ravens, then they win. So they need to go 2-0, and the Bengals need to go 0-2, which isn't inconceivable, right? Once you lose to if the Chiefs want to hold on to the 1 seed, they get the win. Let's assume that happens. Now you set up a scenario where you need help from the Browns to get the Steelers into the playoffs. So the team you essentially just eliminated the week before, do the Browns show up? That's probably the biggest question mark, and the reason why it makes it interesting for Cincinnati if there is a Pittsburgh win, this week.
Right. Yeah, and that could be really, you'll actually have some games that actually mean something in the last week. That's kind of always been the trick of capping. It's almost like don't even bet on the last week of the season because you don't know who's going to be motivated and who isn't.
Right, exactly. Now here's the team that gets screwed the most. Let's say Cincinnati does go 0-2, which means the Browns during this stretch go 2-0. The Browns beat the Steelers, and then in week 18 they beat the Bengals. If the Ravens still win out, so if the Ravens and the Browns both go 2-0, Ravens have the tiebreakers and sneak in, win the division. Browns don't. Now, I don't know a wild card scenario in that case, but it's so interesting. This division is going to be fun to watch. I mean, I can't remember the last time you had in 2 weeks ago in the season you had 4 teams that could win the division.
Yeah, it's wild. It's like you lose, like, what was it? A couple weeks, was it 2 weeks ago that if Cleveland won, they'd be leading the division. If they lost, they'd be dead last. It was kind of like this weird shift of those guys just beating each other up left and right. It's absolutely insane what that division has turned out to be. Very interesting for sure. And I think that had a lot to do with like the injuries on the Baltimore side too.
100%. They were looking at one point like they could run away with it.
Right. And then Cincinnati was kind of on a little bit of a skid, and then they kind of picked things up as of late. So, and then of course Pittsburgh kind of started off a little bit soft, and actually, they're not playing bad, but last week was kind of brutal. So I think they kind of like want to bounce back here. But
which they've done before, which is a good segue. Yes. Let's dive into week 18. Nope, week 17. I can't keep a track of anything anymore. Week 17 and the officials. We're gonna try to give you guys a lot. Preview, end up doing here 5 games. You're probably gonna get somewhere between 6 and 7 picks out of it because we overlap on a couple. We have a couple good ones. So let's have some fun. Let's dive into the matchup we were just talking about, which is actually Monday Night Football, and then we'll work our way backwards. So Monday Night Football, Cleveland at Pittsburgh, the second matchup for these two teams. Pitt sitting there right now, I believe at +3, +3.5. Home favorite. The total sitting around 41.5. For me, this isn't official, and I'm going under. I'm going low. Really, when you look at it, right, that week 8 matchup was 15 to 10. A Pittsburgh victory that Guns alluded to earlier on a closing total of about 42.5. There was some injury uncertainty with that game. Things got a little bit weird. Baker played late. Didn't matter. He was really banged up. Kareem Hunt didn't play. And just kind of set the tone for AFC North football where this thing landed. It was never close, that total, which I absolutely love.
Didn't Pittsburgh lose their kicker in that game too? Isn't that what
they might have? Yeah, I feel like that happens every year to Tomlin. He just starts going for 2.
Yeah, well, it was some weird play that they tried to do a fake with the kicker, and he just got leveled and taken out of the game, and they had no kicker.
Boswell got drilled, right? Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, that was hilarious, and that could probably helped attribute to the under in this one. But when you got divisional, when I like that pick as well, but when you have divisional foes going against each other, and the away team is the favorite, more times than not, you're looking at an underplay. That's kind of like my little system that I've always done with myself. And I think the line is like at 40.5 or something like that. 41.
Yeah, I've seen it as low as 40.5 and as high as 41.5. I grabbed a 41 on one of my available books. You might still be able to get the halves out, but I would definitely grab 41 before it moves. I mean, low points per game. Cleveland's 19th in the league, averaging 20.9. Pitt is 20.1, which is 22nd in the league. When you look at some of these division games here, Just in the division, Pitt game against Cincinnati, 34 points, Cleveland, 25 points, Cincinnati, 51 points, Baltimore, 39 points. So they're 3-1 to that number, with that outlier being the beatdown that they took from the Bengals when I think they scored 10 and the Bengals just kept throwing the ball, which is not the type of matchup you're going to get here, not the type of offense that the Cleveland Browns run. Cleveland in the division against Pitt, 25 points, right? We obviously just talked about that game. Cincinnati, 57, Baltimore, 26, and Baltimore, 46. 2-2 to the number. We should really be 3-1. That Baltimore 46 point was the barely cover that the Ravens had coming back, and I think going for 2 and not getting it, right? That weird, was that Christmas Eve game? That just recently happened, right? And Pitt zagged all year. I think you mentioned the home underdog here. Off of some of these losses, they've looked really good, and some of those losses have been really bad. Tomlin, obviously 41, 24, and 2 against the spread as an underdog, including the loss last week to Kansas City. So that number is still really strong. That favors Pittsburgh a little bit. But I just think here, when you look at the points, you look at what happened in the week 8 matchup, and you look at what these two teams want to do from a game script standpoint, I'm good at anything, south of 40. I'd love to be at 41. So I'm going to grab the 41 before it dips below that key total number.
Yeah. I like the side on that one too, because in that divisional game, you got Pittsburgh coming off like a humongous loss to Kansas City. Kansas City's just rolling. They're just going to be setting themselves up for the first round bye, in my opinion, right now.
Yep.
Especially with like the Patriots kind of like just dipping in the last 2 games.
Exactly.
I don't think Buffalo's going to get there, but
no, there's a scenario where Tennessee could get there, but again, KC could control their own destiny.
Yeah, but I think this is going to be a knockout, drag-out type of scenario, and you just got to ride the dog here. Playing at home, I know they won on the road against Cleveland. They're coming off a bad loss to Kansas City. They're going to want to bounce back. I trust Tomlin to get them into a position to probably get to the last week of the season. That will decide and make a break to get into the playoffs. I think they do it against the Browns, and I like the +3 in this scenario. And I'm just going to be rolling with mostly on the defensive side with the Steelers, and hopefully they can pound the ball on the run and make the necessary stops. Listen, I saw Cleveland last week. They looked terrible against Green Bay. They made bad. Baker was making bad throws. He doesn't want to throw the ball. He wants to hand the ball off on the run. And those running back core is really banged up. And I guess they're feeling the toils of the season. Where I think Pittsburgh will bounce back here. So give me Pittsburgh +3.
There you go. So 2 picks, 1 game. You mentioned the Cleveland Green Bay matchup. So let's go there, because Cleveland did not look good, but Green Bay let them hang around. So you have Minnesota. This might be the Sunday night game at Green Bay.
It is Sunday night.
Minnesota getting 3.5, depending on where you do some of your shopping. So or 6.5, sorry, 6.5 rather. You can't shortchange it. What do you like in this one? I know we got a Guns official incoming.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me nervous knowing I was like, oh yeah, this is Sunday night prime time with Kirk Cousins.
Kirk Cousins under the lights, baby.
Oh yeah, and then you got versus Aaron Rodgers in prime time as well. But I'm
Cousins
still going to be rolling
this year, man. Cousins has been good. People just want to hang on to old narratives.
That's correct. He hasn't done anything, in my opinion, that made him look like the old Kirk Cousins. He's actually played quite well. And I think having the receiver core back, I know Adam Thielen I saw is still questionable. And I think they get Dalvin Cook back from COVID protocol. Listen, they came within 7 points of the Rams last week without having Dalvin Cook in the lineup. And, they're coming off a loss, getting their players back. Green Bay's basically played the level of their competition in the last 4 weeks, and they've won in a 4-0 run. Basically, they've attributed that to the turnovers, getting +2 turnover ratio versus the Rams, +3 versus Chicago, +4 versus Cleveland. And they only won by 2, 15 and 8 in those. So basically, it's not the defense that's really doing the job. It kind of is. They basically just been getting turnovers. So bend not break, and then getting interception, fumbles, what have you. So, and then you have Minnesota coming into this game. They're +7 in turnover ratio for the overall for the year. So they're not a team that's going to be winging it, throwing picks. You have Minnesota coming off a tough loss. And then Green Bay, I just think they're just limping into the playoffs. I don't think they're playing at a high level right now. They're not really saying to me that you're going to be the Super Bowl team right now. You're just kind of playing at the level of your competition. I'm getting 6.5 here. I think at the very least, the game is going to be close. So I like to take the +6.5 in this scenario, and I just think that the public is just going to be like Packers anyway. So I'll take the contrarian side on that one.
Yeah, you might even be able to
6.5.
hold out and get some sevens there, but I like the 6.5.
Yeah.
With the 2-point conversions and the missed extra points, these games are weirder. I would never say seven's still not a key number.
I don't think
but
you
it's
should be
obviously a little
buying
bit different.
any games right now. I
Yeah.
think you have
No,
to
I
wait till close
Yeah.
to game time with
Yeah.
all these lists of people getting on the. I mean, we saw guys get added to the list yesterday. I saw guys getting added to the list today. So you always got to keep watching that moving target of people not being or getting put on the COVID list.
Yeah.
And then it's crazy. And one of the games that we have on here is one, for example, that is one of my plays. They have a huge list of COVID issues. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, 100%. So look for the 6.5 there. You can follow Guns on Twitter at GunsPicks. No underscore in there, I believe, right?
No,
We're just
Guns
Picks.
all one word.
One word, no Z's, all S's. Guns with the Z.
Yep.
So let's go to that one of these other games, and one where I think we have 2 picks between the two of us. And let's talk a little bit about the Titans-Dolphins. We touched on this before in the playoff picture because it is important for the Miami Dolphins to clinging to their playoff hopes and this ridiculous win streak against the NFL bottom feeders. And then you have the Titans who can wrap up the AFC South if they win out, and they can also play their way back into that 1 seed if the Chiefs slip up. So Titans, Dolphins, again, this number is around 3.5, total at 41. Guns, which direction you going?
I mean, I think people are kind of overvaluing Miami, in my opinion. So when you look at their 7-game win streak, they've beaten Houston, they've beaten the Jets, they've beaten Carolina, they've beaten the Jets twice, actually, the Giants and the New Orleans Saints with 20 people out on COVID. So their only real good win was that Thursday night game where they beat up on Baltimore, and it was at home, highly motivated spot. And I think Baltimore
Thursdays
was coming
are
off
always
a big
weird.
win or something like that too. So it was kind of a flat spot for Baltimore.
100%.
Tennessee's
like
2
all stars aligned for the Dolphins.
Yeah, Tennessee's 2-3, but they've kind of been, dealing with a lot of injury issues, especially in the receiver corps. And I think they're getting AJ Brown back's kind of helped, and they kind of showed with their win over San Francisco last week. So getting those key guys back, their defense is playing a lot better. They're playing at home. Miami's defense has been on point as of late. I guess that's kind of been the attributing factor of their success. I don't see it with Tua and that offense really doing a lot. So I think Tennessee, like you said, poised to actually go and win the South. I think this is one of those spots where Miami is just going to have one of those Miami moments and just kind of fall out of the playoffs with, 2 back-to-back losses, maybe. That's kind of where I'm seeing them at right now, especially with the level of competition that they've played. I think Tennessee takes this one -4, but like I said, you have to look at they have a lot of guys that are on the COVID list. No one notable that I've kind of seen maybe on the defensive side. So I'm going to have to watch for that, but that is going to be a number that you buy late and not early. So just pay attention to that.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think you've seen what the benefit of having AJ Brown back in that lineup means for Ryan Tannehill, even without Derrick Henry out. This team is clinging to the hope that maybe they can get Henry back for a playoff run. But what I'm grabbing here is another under. I think this number, like my Browns Steelers pick, should be around 41. That's where I got it, 41 -110. And I like the under here too. And a big part of that is, Miami's defense during this stretch, although against the bottom feeders, has looked better. But the Tennessee Titans offense is nothing to write home about either, right? They're ranked 22nd offensively from a DVOA standpoint. And these teams, I think, are just going to kind of grind it out and battle it out. I mean, the Dolphins, like you said, Tua really has not been that impressive during this mark. One of the big things they've done is they flipped the turnover margin, right? During their 1-7 or 1-8 start, whatever it was, I think 1-7 the first 8 games, they were -4 from a turnover margin standpoint. Now they're sitting at +3. Defensively, they've significantly improved their red zone defense. They are allowing teams to convert at only 31.3% to a TD rate. And the third down conversion rate, which they actually led the league in last year, is down to 32.6% in terms of letting opponents convert on third downs. In those first 8 games, like I mentioned, 51%, right? So a big part of this is the opponents that they've dealt with. but they did have that Thursday night test. They did get the job done against New Orleans, right? And some of those stats I even read, I think the red zone and the third down were going into the Saints game. So those numbers only improved. And, since that Derrick Henry injury, and obviously you had some other, issues during this year, there were a couple games in the stretch, the Rams game right afterwards, the Titans total, that was 44 points. The Saints was 44 points on a very late TD and a missed 2-point conversion. Houston was 35 points. New England, the game that made no sense to me, was 49 points. Those teams were running all over each other. There was no defense. Jacksonville was 20 points. Pitt was 32 points, and San Francisco was 37 points. So most of these numbers trending below that 40-41 mark, and really against similar offenses to Miami in that stretch. The game against Pittsburgh was a total of 23 points, Saints 24 points, Jags 27 points, and Houston 32 points. So again, 3-1 to that number would be 4-0 if not for that NOLA little push to get it over the mark of 46. So I think I like the under here. I think it's going to be a bit of a slow pace. I think you're going to have two teams that want to control the clock and protect their quarterbacks.
It's amazing how Tennessee has come to be an under team and not an over team. Remember,
right?
Especially at home.
Yeah.
They would just score. Now it's a completely different ball game. What a difference one player in the backfield makes to that squad for sure.
100%. So grab the under and grab the Titans, and we'll put an end to this crazy win streak for the Dolphins. So let's finish up quickly with two more. We each have a side in two different games. So I'll kick it to Guns first to give us the Philadelphia-Washington football team pick, NFC East Battle of Titans.
I basically this play is just solely on who's got the motivation to get a playoff spot versus a team that's basically given up. And you saw this team give up last week. So I'm riding with Philly -3 here. They've won 3 in a row, 5 of their last 6, and they beat Washington last time by 27-17 in the last matchup. Washington's lost 3 straight, and they were all divisional games. 2 of them were Dallas. If you look at the net yard battle in those games, -99 versus Dallas in the first game, -282 net yards versus Philly, and then -240 last week where they got demolished on versus Dallas on Sunday night. Now, I mean, Philly's got a +7 point differential on the road. And they have like I said, they have the motivation. They want to win this game. They want to get into the playoffs. I think Jalen Hurts playing so much better, much improved. And he's got a connection with I can't think of the tight end. They got rid of their
Dallas Goedert.
Yeah, Dallas Goedert.
Yeah.
And I just, Washington didn't give up. They're fighting on the sidelines. Their motivation is just dropped. They don't play well at home either. I just think Philly, I know this is a public play, and I know the line's kind of gravitating towards the Washington football team side. I just can't. What I saw in the past 2 weeks, actually 3 weeks out of this Washington football team, they don't want to be there. They want to end the season now, and I think Philly's kind of on the up and up. It'll be interesting to see if they can pull this off. I think a lot of the sharp people are thinking, same old story with Philly. This is where they kind of dip down, but I don't think it's going to happen here. Give me Philly -3.
Yeah, good young core. Maybe the Eagles will take a page out of the Cowboys' books, and like you said, Washington doesn't play at home. Well, it could be because of those benches, and that's why the Cowboys, bust theirs in. So, who knows?
That's correct.
Let's stay in the NFC East with the team I'm fading here, going against NFC North team. And that is the New York Football Giants, another team that kind of embarrassed themselves last week against the Eagles that you just mentioned. Traveling to Chicago and going against the Bears. I mean, I haven't seen the Bears as -6, it felt like, in a long time. Chicago is 5-10 against the spread this year. The Giants 6-9 against the spread. But Chicago is 2-0 against the spread as a home favorite. So, they've only been favored 3 times. They're 2-1 as a favorite all in all. So, again, to see a -6 jump out, I think was pretty telling. And look, the biggest part of this is, could it be close for a half or a quarter or whatever? Like it was, Philly and the Giants, I think, was 3-3 at halftime, right? And then I watched a bloodbath in the second half. And I think a big part of it is the defense that could only hold on and do so much for so long before they realize we're not getting anything out of Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm or whatever this offense is supposed to be. And I think you're going to have a similar thing here, probably against a quality defense in the Chicago Bears and a team building a little bit of momentum maybe on Nick Foles' magic. You could get Justin Fields here. You're probably going to get Nick Foles, and I don't think it matters. I will take the Bears -6 because either Glennon or Fromm are starting again, and neither one of those guys should be NFL starting quarterbacks at this point. I don't hate the under here. It's very low at 37. You could get some garbage and some weird stuff that happens. We did see a number around this in the Dolphins Saints game that stayed under. I think it was closed probably at like 37.5. It was hovered around 39 for a while, but that's, to me, always playing a little bit with fire, once you dip below those 41. So tread lightly, maybe a good live opportunity if they outpace that thing quickly and it jumps back up a little bit. But I do like the Bears -6. Guns, any thoughts on that one?
Hey, listen, I actually saw a new life in that team last week against Seattle. They pulled off a great victory last week, winning by a point. Hopefully this momentum carries over, but like I said, I can't trust that. I can't trust Glennon. I can't trust the Giants or whatever they're doing. For me, you always see a little bit of hope out of them in the first half. And then by the time the second half hits, it's complete disaster.
I grabbed the Eagles game at a -4 or 4.5 live,
right?
During it. I forget if it was 3-3 or 3-0 at that point, but like what they did in the second half was a train. They ran through them like a train.
But you made a good point on taking them on the live line. Like if you see the Giants kind of jump out to a 3-0 lead, or even just scoring a touchdown early, you might as well just jump on whatever line the Chicago side gives you and just ride it out, because basically this team just they play hard at first and then they just kind of dip. I've always been kind of like taking little small personal plays on whoever the Giants are playing, take the opposite team in the second half.
Little fade,
Yeah, just to fade that. It's really hard to take the Giants. No, even if you see the sharp money going that way, I was like, it's the Giants. They're gonna mess it up somehow. I know the line's short, but no, I can't. There's like probably 7 or 8 teams that you just know that you're either betting the other side or you're not betting them at all, because Jaguars being one of them. You just can't trust them at all.
100%. Look for those live opportunities. And where you can find some of those live opportunities, if you follow us on Twitter. This has been a great show. We're going to sign out here. 40 plus minutes of content. The podcast will probably be a little bit shorter, but we're going to have some fun with this. We gave you guys a ton of picks that I'll try to rattle off right now before we sign off. So Miami at Tennessee, we're taking the under 41, and Tennessee should be around -3.5, -4. Giants at Bears, we are taking Chicago -6. Cleveland at Pittsburgh. This is the Monday night football game. We are taking the under 41 and Pittsburgh +3.5. Philadelphia -3 on the road at the Washington football team. And last but not least, Sunday Night Football. Can Kirk Cousins, primetime Kirk, get the best of Aaron Rodgers again? Minnesota Vikings +6.5, unofficial. Guns, thank you so much for joining me. Anything to plug? Where can the great folks find you online?
And you can just follow me on Twitter, Instagram at Gunspicks, GUNZPICKS. That is the name you can find me at. I give away, we have GPL locked together, but, I give an occasional free play, college basketball, NFL, college football bowl season. I'll be cooking with that. So, and also once we get into the spring, we'll be talking a little MLB as well. So yeah, just go check me out there. And thanks for having me. It's actually a real fun show as always. And you can check us out on the Dad Bots podcast.
Always check out the Dad Bots. Always. Yep. Always. But you can find me on Twitter at @the_odds_fellow. Check out at 1:37 p.m. The great folks who bring you this wonderful podcast, because this is, and this always will be, short-term, high volatility investments. Thanks for joining. Let's go cash all those tickets. Cheers all.
Peace.